Welcome children. Today I am here with the second part of Support and Movements of Organisms lesson. It is the 8th lesson of grade 9 science syllabus. If you can remember from our previous session we discussed about the support and movements of animals. So today let's discuss about the support and movement of plants. Support of plants. Plants need a mechanical support to stay erect. It is because the plants have to get the maximum amount of sunlight for their photosynthesis process. So, always plant grow upright direction. To hold up all the branches and the weight of the stem, plant need this mechanical support. When we considering about the support of plants, we can divide all these plants into two main categories. They are woody plants and non-woody plants. Woody plants contain a hardwood. This hardwood is made of expired xylem tissue. The original function of xylem tissue is transporting water. But when the time passes, these xylem cells become expired. The chemical substances such as cellulose and lignin deposited inside these all xylem cells, so that the xylem cell wall become thicker and the inner cavity is closed by these chemical substances, so that all xylem tissues cannot transport water. These cellulose and lignin are very hard substances. They are very affordable for many sharks and for the insects. So they are very hard substances. So these old xylem cells become very strong due to these chemical substance deposits. From these old xylem cells, it creates the hardwood of woody plants. Creating the hardwood is a very long process. It takes a very long time of period. So that when the plant grow year by year, the hardwood also become stronger and become wider. But in non-woody plants, we can name these non-woody plants as herbs also. They don't have a hardwood because most of these non-woody plants are annual or biannual plants. So they don't have a much longer lifetime. Their lifetime is very short. So there isn't enough time to generate a hardwood. So these non-woody plants have a very soft stem. The stems of these plants erect when getting enough water. When there is a storage of water in these stems, these stems become erect. But then when there is a shortage of water, these plant stems lose their erectness and bend down. When we again water these plants, they can keep their erectness again. From this diagram, you can see how the stem of a woody plant appears. Usually the woody plants are large trees. They have a very rough stem. When we observe a cross section of the stem, you can see that there is a dark color region at the middle of this stem. This dark color region is the heartwood of this plant. Non-woody plants appears like this. They don't have a heartwood inside their stem. When these stems filled with water, they can keep their erectness. Then let's discuss about the movements of plants. Changing the location of a plant part or the total plant as a response to a stimulus is known as a plant movement. These plant movements mainly occur as a growth or a turgor change. There are three types of plant movements. They are tropic movements, nastic movements and tactic movements. Plants usually respond to the stimuli such as light, gravity, water or humidity, chemical substances and touch. These are the stimuli which determine the movement of the plants. So, let's discuss about the tropic movements first. Always these tropic movements are a growth movement. Plant growth substances are very important to control these types of movement because tropic movement is a growth. The direction of the stimulus is influenced on the direction of the response. It means according to the direction of the stimulus, the response can determine toward the stimulus or away from the stimulus. So according to that, there are two types of tropic movements. They are positive tropism and negative tropism. Positive tropism means growing the plant parts toward the stimulus. According to the this stimulus type, we can identify few types of tropic movements, positive tropic movements. Some of them are you have given here as the examples. Positive phototropism, it means growing the plant toward light. Positive geotropism means growing toward the gravity or the ground. Positive hydrotropism means grow toward water. Positive chemotropism means grow toward a chemical. Finally, positive thigmotropism means grow toward touches. Here are some examples for each positive tropic movement. The stems of the plants always grow toward light. It means it is a positive tropic movement. Then the root grows always toward the ground. So it is a positive geotropic movement. Roots usually go to find the water. It is because roots are the plant part that absorb water. So to fulfill their function, they always need to grow toward water. So this is a positive hydrotrophic movement. When we consider about the pollens, these pollen tubes grow also always toward the ovules for the pollination. The pollen tube find this ovule by the chemical products produced by this ovule. So the movement of pollen tube is a positive chemotropic movement. The clinging and the coiling of tendrils around a support is a positive thigmotropic movement. This is how the stems grow toward light. And this diagram shows how the root grow toward the gravity and water. The apical buds of the vein and the tendrils clinging and coiling around the support can be observed. Both these movements are positive thigmotropic movements. They get enough support to grow by this clinging and coiling. This is how the pollen tubes grow toward the ovules. This process is called pollination, and pollination is a chemotropic, positive chemotropic movement. Then let's discuss about the negative tropism. Growing the plant parts away from the stimulus is known as negative tropism. So we also can consider about some types of negative tropic movements. For an examples, growing away from light. The roots of the plants always grow away from light. It is a negative tropic movement. Then negative geotropism means grow away from gravity. So here are the examples. As I told you, growing the roots away from light is a negative tropic movement. Also, growing the stems away from gravity is a negative geotropic movement. So those are the things we have to learn about tropic movements. The second type of plant movement is nastic movement. These movements are occurred due to the turgor changes. Turgor changes mean changing the amount of water inside the plant cells. Plant growth substances are not important to control these movements because these are not growth movements. The direction of the stimulus is not influenced on the direction of the response, so that we cannot divide nastic movements as positive nastic or negative nastic because the direction is not influenced on the response. But the direction of the movements are always occur toward a specific certain direction, so that we cannot, as I told you before, we cannot divide them as a positive or negative nastic movement. According to the stimulus, we can divide these nastic movements into a few types. You have given here some examples. One of them is Nicotinastic Movement. It means sleeping or shrinking leaves when the dark falls. When it becomes night, some plants are observed like sleeping. It is a Nicotinastic movement. Another one is Haptonastic movement. It means sleeping or shrinking leaves when touched. Seismonastic movements mean sleeping when shocked. Also, there is another type of movement called photonastic movement. It means blooming flowers with the sunrise. When light gets, the flowers become blue. You have given some examples here for these nastic movements. Nicotinastic movement can be seen in the plants like nelly and the legume plants such as katurumurunga, tamarind, mimosa and mara. All these plants sleep at the evening. So, it is called a Nicotinastic movement. And the haptonastic movements are appeared in Mimosa plant. Also, the Mimosa is respond to the touches and the shocks. So, it shows the seismonastic movements also. So, photonastic movements, there are many examples we can get. Roses, sunflowers, lotus and many other types of flowers blooms in the morning. This is how the legume plants' leaves shrink or sleep when the dark falls. Here you can see the same pair of leaves and how these leaves shrink when the time passes. From this diagram you can see how the mimosa leaves sleep when touched. Actually, this is a very specific type of movement. Mimosa is the only plant that shows the movement like this. So, this is the blooming of flowers. Those are photonastic movements. Then let's see how the mimosa plant show haptonastic movements. In these mimosa plants, there is a specific part called pulvinus. This pulvinus controls the nastic movement of mimosa plant. When inside this, when the water content inside this pulvinus change, these nastic movements occur. Look at the diagram. You can see that where these pulvinuses are situated. Actually, there are primary pulvinuses, secondary pulvinuses and the tertiary pulvinuses. Inside the plant cells, there is a large fluid-filled vacuoles. In the upper diagram, you can see these vacuoles in blue color. These vacuoles contain almost all the amount of water inside these cells. When we touch the mimosa leaf, this water immediately go out from these cells. It means a rapid loss of water create shrinking these cells. In the lower diagrams, you can see how these cells shrink. You can see that the volume of the vacuole have been decreased. Because of this action, the mimosa plant leaf become shrink. This is a very quick and rapid action. Okay, so now you know very well about two plant movements. So we are going to discuss about the third type of plant movement. It is tactic movements. Tactic movements mean moving the whole organism as a response to a stimulus. But the higher plants, it is impossible to travel, or it is impossible to move the whole plant, so that these tactic movements can be seen in evolutionary lower plants and algae. The direction of the stimulus is influenced on the direction of response, such as the trophic movements we discussed before. It is very easy to observe these tactic movements in the algae called Chlamydomonas. In the following diagram, you can see the structure of a Chlamydomonas. There are two flagella in a Chlamydomonas body. Chlamydomonas is an algae. They have two flagellas for the locomotion, as I told you before. They move away always toward the surfaces of water. These Chlamydomonas is algae, so they are living inside water. So when the sunlight falls on the surfaces of water bodies, these Chlamydomonas always travel toward this sunlight to get enough amount of light for their photosynthesis process during daytime. So always they attract toward the sunlight, so it is a positive phototactic movement toward the sunlight, so it is a positive phototactic movement. And if in some events, if there are harmful chemicals in the water bodies where these algae are living, if these chemicals are harmful to them, these Chlamydomonas swim away from these harmful chemicals. So they always repel these harmful chemicals. So it is a negative chemotactic movement. So these are two examples for the tactic movements, and it is very easy to observe these tactic movements using these Chlamydomonas. So those are the very specific the specific facts that we have to discuss about the plant movements. Now we are moving to discuss some other facts about these plant movements. Actually, these the facts that we are going to discuss here are not in your textbook, so you can find another knowledge resources, and you can search on Google to find these facts further. I'll explain a little bit, but you can find about these more. Okay, so we are going to discuss about the dancing plant. Also, we call it as the Pranajiva plant. This is a plant which is situated in Sri Lanka also. In wet zone, we can find out this plant. This is a medicinal plant. The speciality of this plant is this plant also show immediate responses like that the Mimosa plant, but the Mimosa plant react for the touches and the shocks, but this plant responds for the music and the human voice. And also this plant is very sensitive for the human body temperature. If you are able to find such plant, try to observe this. If you can see that in the diagram, you can see there are feather like small leaflet around the large leaf. So these small leaflets are the moving parts of this plant. They are the dancing parts of this plant. When we close our hand near to this plant, these small feather-like structures turn toward our hands. And also when this plant hear a music or a human voice, they also react like that. So that is why we are calling this plant as a dancing plant. Many researchers yet doing different research on this plant, and they are trying to find out the mechanism of moving these small leaflets. There are many hypotheses, but they haven't totally found the whole mechanism of moving these plant parts. So this is a specific plant movement that we can observe. And the other one is carnivorous plants. These carnivorous plants also show quick movements to catch their prey. Carnivorous plants mean they catch small insects or small animals to get nutrients, because these carnivorous plants are growing in nutritional slack soil, on the soils of in anywhere. If the soil is not much consist with much nutrients, there can be these carnivorous plants. So they need to complete their nutritional needs. For that, they catch small animals as their prey. When an insect touches the inner surface of this structure, it activates immediately and close these two lids together. So this is actually a hypnostic movement, because it is sensitive for the touches or shocks. In the diagram you can see the Venus flytrap plant. This is a well-known carnivorous plant for this hypnostic movements. This is how these plants catch a prey. If you can see that there are small hair-like structures inside this two lids. When the insect touch these hairs, it activate and it trap the insect inside that structure, and they secrete the digestive fluid and start to digest that insect. Okay, so now we discussed about different types of plant movements. So from this lesson, it is very clear that anyhow these plants show the movements, but the plant cannot totally move from a place to another. Clear? It means they cannot locomote. So, they cannot avoid extreme hazardous conditions of the environment and the environmental changes. Usually, plants grow in the habitats where there are enough resources for the plant growth. So, what will happen if this environment change? They will not able to gain the enough resources for their growth. If these original habitats are destroyed, these plant species will not be able to survive further. This is severely affected on the indigenous plant species, because these indigenous plant species can be extinct easily. Indigenous means very rare plant species which can be seen in certain environmental systems. So if that environmental system become destroyed, these plants also become extinct. So we must protect these types of plant species. So the conservation means protecting organisms and their habitats to delay the extinction of those organisms. Not only the plants, we can conserve animal species too. In the world, there are two types of conservation strategies. The first one is in situ conservation. It means protecting organisms within their natural environments or within their natural habitats. We can get some examples from Sri Lanka. Those are national parks, forest reserves, sanctuaries and wetlands. Those are in situ conservation places where the organisms protected in their motherlands, in their natural habitats. The other strategy is ex situ conservation. It means protecting the organisms out from their natural habitats. For an examples, we can get zoological gardens, botanical gardens, seed banks, gene banks. These are the ex situ conservation methods. In Sri Lanka also we can see the zoological gardens in Ridiyagama, Dehiwala. Those are in Pinnavala there are zoological gardens, and there are some botanical gardens also in Sitawaka, Peradeniya, Haggala. Those are botanical gardens which conserve the plants as ex situ conservation. But from these two strategies, the best method of protecting a type of organism is in situ conservation. It is because conservation means protecting not only the organism but also his natural environment. So to protect the natural environment, it is the best method is in situ conservation. In the diagram, you can see some forest reserves of Sri Lanka. The first diagram shows the Sinharaja forest and the second diagram shows the Retigala forest. In appearance, you can see that the plant species growing in these two forests are totally different, because Sinharaja forest is a wetland forest and the Retigala forest is a intermediate zone forest. So the plant species are different to each other and the environmental conditions also different to each other. Here are some examples for the national parks in Sri Lanka, and you can see the specific organisms who are living in these parks also. The Udawalawa National Park is very famous for the elephants, and the Boondala National Park is very famous for the migratory birds. Wilpattu National Park is famous for the leopards. Horton Plains, it is a mountain forest, so it has a totally different environment from the other national parks. Such as these national parks also have different environmental conditions, and the organisms living in these national parks are also different from each other. So we have a responsibility to protect all these types of organisms, all these types of plant in our surrounding, because our environment is completing by protecting all these organisms. As humans, we cannot live without these natural resources. So those are the things we have to discuss about this lesson. I hope you gain enough amount of knowledge from this lesson, so I'll meet you with another lesson. Thank you for watching the video. Hope you will wait for another lesson. Thank you. Have a nice day.